We are going to talk some more SEC football on the Our Football Network for the OFN today. And that means Florida Gators and Scott Carter, senior writer and editor at FloridaGators.com. Thanks for doing this again, Scott.
Hey, Greg. Thank you for having me, man. It's at that time of year. Seems like we just did it yesterday, right? It's amazing as you get
Yeah,
older how fast the off season flies. Because is there even an off season anymore? I mean, it doesn't seem like it.
I know. And then before you know it, the thing about college, especially, it goes by so fast. It just does. I mean, because
Yep.
once you get through the first few games of the season, you look up and you're like, oh, in 2 months the season's over. So
Yeah.
it's just too fast. But
Yeah. Yeah.
playoffs are coming next year, and I think when that comes, it'll lengthen it a little bit more, and that'll make things even a little bit more fun for the fans.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, the whole landscape of college sports continues to shift. People ask me like, "Well, where's this thing headed?" And I'm like, "I don't know where exactly it's headed, but we're certainly in the middle of the bridge,
Yeah.
and it's going to look different in a year or two than it does right now, and it's already looking a lot different than it did 2 or 3 years ago." So
Yes.
it's kind of fascinating to see. But I think to your point, when all this is said and done, the playoffs are going to be longer. There's going to be more college football. I think the matchups are going to be the ones that the fans want to see.
Yep.
And I think the product is going to be very good. It's just I don't know how everything else in the landscape of college athletics is going to look.
Yeah, that's leave it to the experts, I guess.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, like you said, the matchups, because you ain't going to be able to duck anybody or have disagreements about home and money. And hey, playoffs say you're there, you're there. That's who you're going.
Yeah,
That's who you match up with, and that's what the
yeah,
fans want to see.
yeah,
So
yeah.
now, by the time that happens next year, maybe that'll be good for Florida because there's an obvious drop in production talent. Anthony Richardson at the top of being a top 5 draft pick and already being named a week 1 starter in the NFL and among other players. So not a lot of experience coming back for the Florida Gators this season. So a lot of unknowns, but wasn't that expected? I mean, wasn't this fans, shouldn't they understand that when Napier came in, that this was basically going to be a 3 or 4 year deal before you started to see the type of results that Gator fans wanted?
Yeah, I mean, I think all the indicators were there. It was said as much. In today's landscape, I mean, they want a winner right away. Florida fans generally are not that patient, but I think even some of those Gator fans who in years past maybe would be yelling at the top of their lungs after back to back 6 and 7 seasons. I think they even understand. Wow, this is a place where the Florida Gators have not been in a long, long time, and we're talking about decades. And it was a total rebuild. And last year they moved into the new facility. They started doing things differently internally in so many ways under Billy Napier. First year, this year, it's more of a transition on the field. I mean, all you got to do is look at the roster, the preseason camp roster, 48 new players on that roster. That says, all you about need to know. I mean, this is a team that's definitely in transition. Um, and I think this year, you look around, you read about the Florida Gators, you hear people talk about where the Gators are going this year. I've seen everything from 3 to 9 wins. I've kind of been stuck in that middle. When I see the range so far, that tells me that's probably going to be somewhere in the middle. So I'm like a 6-6 guy right now. And anything above that, I think that's a credit to this team and this coaching staff. But in reality, I know it could be less than that too. So it's just where they are. But I do think that what I've seen from Billy Napier and the way that he does things and the way he's or building this program, I really like the foundation more than in really any recent years. I mean, I just think it's going in the right direction. But
Okay.
yes, it's going to take a little more time, Greg, to answer the heart of your question.
And let's start offensively because quarterback, this is football. It's where it really that's the difference maker. But Richardson's gone, and it's just that's one bad thing about college football or sports, college sports in general, is that there's so much build up for like a player like Richardson.
Yeah.
And boy, we want to get him on the field. Come on, we got to get him out there. Let's give him a chance. And okay, gets a chance. Now he's gone. I
Yeah.
mean, he's just gone. I mean, couldn't he have played another year? But that's college football. Why not? He's top 5 draft pick. He made the right decision. So, but anyway, they had to go out. Now it's the transfer days of college football, and they bring in a veteran quarterback to compete with a young quarterback. So, how's that going? Because me being a Big Ten guy, Mertz has, I don't know, every single year I would hear Graham Mertz, this is going to be his year. This is the year Graham Mertz is going to live up to the hype. And he
Yeah.
just never did. And now you can say what you want. Coaching staff's gone. Different. Blame it on the coaches, maybe offensively. They've had some issues there. Maybe that's the case. So this is his opportunity now to maybe. Now he's got a new coaching staff. Maybe that was more of the issue. If he's handled differently, maybe he can live up to all of the hype. But how's that battle going between Mertz and the young quarterback?
Well, I mean, Mertz is the guy. Billy Napier has named him the starter heading into the Utah game, and I don't think there was any real surprise there. If you watched him in the spring and kind of listened to what Billy Napier was saying, you really felt he was going to be the guy. That's why they brought him in, and they got Jack Miller the third here from Ohio State, Max Brown, the young redshirt freshman, and behind them they got a couple of other transfer guys who are long shots, to make it with Micah Leon, former UConn quarterback, believe it or not. And so it's kind of an unknown beyond Graham Mertz. He comes in with 32 career starts at Wisconsin. I wrote this week, that's the most starts that any Gators quarterback has put together in college since Tim Tebow had
Wow.
41. So that just shows you they've had 15 quarterbacks now as starts since Tebow left in 2009, and not many of them have been able to do much consistently except Kyle Trask. And we saw how that happened with the 2020 season. They were a good team, but Anthony Richardson last year, amazing talent, and NFL fans are now going to get to see what Florida fans saw. He's going to be up and down, but Anthony has an amazing skill set and can do things that few quarterbacks, if any, can do. So it's going to be really interesting to see him develop on that stage. But you can't fault him for leaving early. Like you
No.
said, number 4 overall pick. I mean, if I'm him and if I'm his dad, I'm telling him to leave too. So here it's Graham Mertz, and Graham Mertz' second chance. This is
Yep.
a big opportunity for him. It's a situation where he's got a good running game with Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne behind him. He's got some young but talented receivers. The offensive line, I think the first team, a couple others are going to be solid for him. They just have to stay healthy. So I think there's some pieces there that maybe he had been lacking consistently at Wisconsin, but we'll see. I mean, you just never know with these situations, Greg. Sometimes, he's talking this week or in camp. He was talking about, yeah, let's face it, he's got a chip on his shoulder because he knows that what went down at
Yep.
Wisconsin, and he started there such, with such a bang. I mean, one of the great first games and
Yeah.
probably you could have as a quarterback. And fans, I think the expectations got out of whack there, and then the team had some injuries on the offensive front. He was inconsistent at quarterback. They also had some receiver issues. So you add all that up, and you get an inconsistent stay at Wisconsin. And now he's going to try to resurrect it with the Gators. And you know what? If he does, and if he surpasses their expectations, maybe the Gators are going to be better than a lot of people expect.
That's
But
right.
if he struggles and plays like Wisconsin, well, it could be a long season. So
That's
we're
it.
just going to have to wait and see.
That's why no one really knows. You can make all the predictions you want, but you just don't know. Uh,
As
and
Al Michaels likes to say, nobody knows nothing. That's kind of how I stand on
right.
some of it. Yeah.
All right. So now it's kind of unusual that there's a couple of transfers. So are these young? So these are older transfers, right? The quarterbacks that came in.
Yeah, Michael Leon's been around. I mean, he's a guy that at UConn he got hurt, broke his leg in a game against Houston, and he figured his career was over, and he really didn't plan to play again. But Florida saw him out there in the available and gave him a chance. And I watched a scrimmage earlier this week that when I watched Micah Leon, he looks like he's got some real tools. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets out there. I mean, obviously, if it goes the way the Gators will like,
Yeah.
Graham Mertz will lock it down, and they won't have to kind of dip into that that pocket. But at the same time, I think he's a guy that I don't know. I think he can play. I mean, I really do. So we'll see how that goes. And Jack Miller III, the transfer from Ohio State, we didn't see him at all until the bowl game after Anthony Richardson left. He got the start against Oregon State in the Las Vegas Bowl, and it wasn't pretty. I mean, the Gators laid one of their worst eggs I've seen. They lost
Yeah,
31-3,
it's
but it wasn't really Miller's fault. But at the same time, I mean, he didn't blow anybody away, and now he's the second guy behind Mertz. So we'll just see how that shakes out. Bottom line is they do have some experience there, but not a lot of proven accolades, if you will.
Scott, do they have a quarterback on the roster right now or someone that was recruited in next year's class at quarterback that fans are excited about?
Well, DJ Lagway is that guy. He's committed here for the 24 class. He's
Okay.
been at camp some. He's been recruiting. If you watch him on social media, he I think is the quarterback of the future
Okay.
at Florida. But he's not playing this year.
No.
He's not here. That he's playing, but it's out in Texas in high school. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but he's the guy I think that they're looking at toward the future. But Graham Mertz technically has 2 years of
Oh, he
eligibility
does.
remaining.
Okay.
And then, of course, like we talked about the other guys, Max Brown, who is he's a redshirt freshman, came in last year as just a guy you kind of filling out the roster. But of all the quarterbacks out there, I mean, he's the one who's progressed the most since last year, in my
Oh,
opinion.
okay.
He's kind of grown into his body some. So we'll see how that goes. But right now it's Mertz, and then they're on that bridge to what
Okay.
they hope Flagway. So
Sounds like an interesting quarterback room then,
yeah,
with a lot
it
of
really is.
possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I do have the Ourlads depth chart up for the Florida Gators as I'm going through this. And you mentioned Johnson and Etienne, so they're really set there with the 1-2 punch at running back. You mentioned the receiver situation. Now, you have the team has Pearsall, so he's the clear number one.
Yep.
And then Douglas, they're expecting a jump in production this year for Douglas, correct?
Yeah, Caleb Douglas was a guy who wasn't really high on the radar last year, but he had some moments where he's part of the plan here in 2023, and him and Pearsall and Jaquavian Fraziers. I mean, those are kind of like the most experienced guys. And then you have three freshmen who I really like just from watching them in camp, and that's Andy Jean out of Miami, Eugene Wilson III. He goes by Trey Wilson out of Tampa, and then they've got Aiden Mizell from Orlando, and they all offer a little bit of different skill sets. Aiden Mizell's kind of a burner who can get down the field. Trey Wilson is that classic underneath receiver, get him the ball in space, really athletic, has a really shifty lower body that can make people miss. And then
Okay.
I think Andy Jean is that guy on the outside, a little bigger than the other two, just a dependable go-to guy. I think ideally is what they'd like to have him become. So they've got an experience or a mix of experience and really fresh faces in those three guys I just mentioned. So it's going to be interesting to just see how they blend, who kind of emerges and who kind of fades. But there's going to be a lot of players getting a look at that position early in the season.
Okay. And I also noticed there's a lot of size in the unit. Matter of fact, Marcus Burke is 6'4". He's one of the bigger guys, right?
Yeah, and Burke's a guy who has every opportunity to really make a statement. He's had just some. I think he's one of those guys that coaches have had to really stay on to get him to understand the opportunity at hand. And I think they're wanting to see the light go off this year. And if it
Yep.
does, he's certainly a talented player.
All right, tight end. Xanders, he is the returning starter. Is he the guy now?
Yeah,
Is he
Dante Sanders, he would be the leader there to start. He's missed a lot of preseason camp with nagging injuries. So you've had
okay?
Arliss Boardingham uh, get a lot of looks through camp. There's a true freshman that came in. I'm looking through my roster here because all these names run together after a little while, Greg. But hold on
Is
here.
that Troy Livingston? Tony Livingston?
Yeah, Troy Tony Livingston's the guy they really like at tight end. They both have been getting extra work now
Okay.
with Sanders kind of slowed. So I think that there's a big question mark there. Depending on when Sanders, how quickly he can overcome whatever he's dealing with, because they already lost Keon Zipper, who would have been the projected starter there. He's out for the year with a knee injury. So really, you're looking at Sanders and Livingston and Boardingham as three guys. That should be enough to work there. But I think with the kind of offense that they're going to have, with it more of a built around the running game,
Okay.
possession, game management, quarterback play. I think you want that tight end to be a productive part of your offense. Obviously,
I know it's only been a year, but do we know? I mean, obviously Napier has his style. So do we know yet what Billy wants to do with his offense if he had his druthers?
yeah. It's really going to be a mix. I don't. He's never clearly identified. Hey, we're gonna be this or that. Obviously, it's built around the run game, and that's when you have two guys like ETN and
Yep.
Johnson. If you look at what they did last year, I mean that was their bread and butter, so to speak, the run game. But I think you had such a unique player in Anthony Richardson last year that he could do some things at the quarterback position that really just unscripted.
Yeah.
So it was hard to really identify exactly what kind of offense they were because Anthony was so unique. So I think with Mertz, you're going to see more of your typical pro style offense built around a drop back passer, uh, and making those throws that he has to make, and trying to keep them on schedule, as coaches like to say, so it doesn't all get on him in the passing game,
Yep.
because I don't think that's what they want it to be. They want it to be a lot of third and fours and third and threes, so they can really keep a defense guessing and move the ball.
Yeah, because that's really remembering his last few seasons at Louisiana. They were more of a running team. That's
Yeah,
they
they
had
really
some
were.
really good running backs and a good quarterback who had mobility. Yeah.
Yep, and that's kind of what they want here, with Mertz.
And then the offensive line. Now, this is where we're going to see a lot of movement, right? Because I believe the team has a handful of transfers coming in and only a couple of starters coming back. So, uh, is they're going to figure this all out during camp?
Yeah, that's what they've been doing. I think they've got their first team, and you're looking at Austin Barber on left tackle and Kingsley Eguacon at center. Those are the two guys
Okay.
who most familiar with. Richie Leonard is also a returner who he's played both interior positions, both sides on guard during his career. He's a starter up there, most likely at left guard.
Okay.
And on the right side, you're looking at some new guys. A freshman, Najee Harris, has taken a lot of reps inside on the right side during camp. I think the right tackle spot is Damian George Jr., the transfer from Alabama. They had a transfer who I think they were hoping to make a difference, Keontae Goodwin, but he had some family issues, so he left over this summer. He was a transfer they brought in from Kentucky, and then so that kind of hurt their depth some. And
Okay.
now I think they're really just like looking to build some depth there behind the players we just mentioned. And there's a lot of names there: Justin Herman, uh, Cameron Waits, a guy who came in with Napier last year from Louisiana. He hurt his knee in the spring, so he's not 100% right now. So they're hoping that sometime he joins the mix during the season and gets back to 100%. So it's just kind of where they are, Greg, on that offensive line. I think they have five or six they really like, but they hope they can stay healthy, because after that there's a lot of question marks.
Did you mention Maskua?
And Maskua, I did not mention Micah
Okay.
Maskua from Baylor. He's a guy that will definitely be playing a lot. I think he will probably be a starter if healthy on the right side. Maskua adds some toughness, and there was some questions about his availability over the summer, but he's been out there in camp. He's been playing a lot inside at the right guard position.
Okay.
So I think him and Najee Harris has also played some center. So I think Harris is probably going to be another guy like Richie Leonard early in his career, who just kind of gives him some flexibility on the interior line there.
Okay. So basically, I can switch the Arledge depth chart. We could switch Leonard to left guard and Maskua to right.
Correct.
Okay. All right, let's talk defense and the just like the offense. There's going to be a lot of changes. Uh, there are a couple new transfers on the defensive side of the ball and some key freshmen. Does the team have like a number one guy up front? Because we're hearing Napier is very optimistic about this unit, this front seven. So is there like a guy, somebody that is, yeah, check this guy out. He's gonna be around here and he's gonna be productive the next few years.
Well, the guy that's getting a lot of the attention is Princely Mamelan, the edge rusher.
Okay,
He's kind of reshaped his body. He had some good production in the second half of last season. I think he still has a lot to prove, Greg, but I do think he's talented, and they're going to be depending on him a lot in the pass rush. And one of the unfortunate parts of camp, guys getting hurt. They lost Justice Boone up front for the year with a torn ACL, so he's going to have surgery here before the season starts, and we'll look for him in 2024. So that
okay,
was a big hit up there. So, but they have Tyreek Sapp who he can play inside and outside, so I think he'll pick up some of the snaps that Justice Boone would have had at the edge. Interior line, Chris McClellan is a young guy who they really like. He's going to be a starter up there. Mostly Desmond Watson, the biggest guy in college football, the 439 pounder, or maybe he's 455, depends on what day you get him. But he's going to be a guy up there to take a lot of reps.
okay.
It's going to be a unit to me that I think Austin Armstrong, the first year defensive coordinator, he's going to switch things up. You'll see 3-4, you'll see some 4-3. He does a lot of his movement after the snap to keep the quarterback guessing. So we're truly learning about what that's going to look like. But he's brought a lot of energy there. It's going to be a young defense, and it's almost a mirror of the offense in a lot of ways, Greg. There's going to be a lot of players rotating in and out early in the season, and I think they're going to look for answers there as everyone else is as the season progresses.
Cam Jackson, he's another transfer, correct, from Memphis, I believe.
Yep, Cam Jackson, probably one of the guys they're most excited about up front. He'll certainly be playing. They talked a lot about him in the spring and all through camp. He is a transfer. They brought in Caleb Banks, another transfer from Louisville. Uh, Taraja Mitchell at linebacker, another transfer. Uh, so yeah, it's the age we live in, right? I mean, you
Yeah,
have a lot of transfers
that's
every year,
it.
and I think where you're in position that Florida is, they really need them this year.
Yeah. And by the way, Princely, does he have a nickname yet to make things easier for
You
everybody?
know, I call him Prince because oftentimes I'm like you. I butcher that last name every time I say it. I'm like, I got to think about it, right?
Yeah, right.
Prince Uman Milan. But I just call him Prince, man. But
That works.
he's the number one, wearing number one. So that's how you'll identify him.
That's
And
it.
he's a guy that they hope has a breakout season worthy of a number one.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. He would probably be one of your top breakthrough candidates then.
Yeah, he's definitely there on the defense side. He would be the number one guy I'm watching for because if he has the kind of season that people are projecting, that's going to be a huge difference maker for Austin Armstrong and his defense.
And then the situation, by the way, you talked a little bit about the linebackers as well. All of them are gone, the starters from last year.
Yeah,
So that's why, again, it's just completely wide open. And I know we talk about Prince as a linebacker, but he's more edge rusher. It really is
yeah.
what we're talking about. But still, that's three transfers coming in. You've named some of them. So um, same thing, linebacker. Is there one guy we should be
I
talking
think
about?
Shamar James is the guy they're really looking forward to
Okay.
step up. He had a good year last year as a freshman. He's a take charge guy, and if he can be that guy there, you're looking at those veterans they brought in like Taraja Mitchell, Deuce Spurlock from Michigan, some of those guys to really add some veteran presence there. But Shamar James is the guy they want to
Okay.
be the leader there, and
Uh,
he's got all the physical tools to be that.
okay. And then finally in the secondary, I believe both starting safeties are gone. And
Yep.
once again, there are transfers coming in. So you're probably going to see actually, you got one transfer from Michigan. I know Moten as a Michigan
Yep.
guy,
Yep.
and Wilson. He had some playing time last year. So how's so really most of the inexperience is at safety, correct? They're pretty experienced at corner.
Yeah, I mean Jason Marshall Jr. At the one cornerback spot. He's the most veteran guy back there, and he's not very veteran, but he did start most of last year. I think he's probably got a huge upside when you look at the next level. He's a guy that I think
Yes.
projects there. Opposite him, it's kind of I think Jalen Kimber, the former Georgia transfer,
Okay.
who we saw some last year. I think he's emerged there as a maybe opposite Marshall at safety. Uh, it's Miguel Mitchell and Kamari Wilson both got some playing time last year. They're still certainly factors there. I think Mitchell may be a little bit ahead of Wilson. I think R.J. Moten, the transfer from Michigan, is going to get some significant playing time. A freshman I really like, I know the coaches like, is Jordan Castell. He's gotten a lot of work during camp, so I think he's a player to watch for. And they got the star position. In the old days, they used to call that a nickelback.
Yes.
Different schools call it different things. They
Yeah.
call it star at Florida. Jaden Hill is a veteran presence there. He's moved to that position. So yeah, a lot of new faces there. Some freshmen we haven't mentioned. I think it's just going to be Devin Moore is another cornerback that you'll see. Jadarius Perkins is back. He's been playing some star behind Jaden Hill. So Florida, one thing they will do is run a lot of players in and out on defense. They've always done that. I think they're going to continue to do that under Austin Armstrong. And Armstrong's system, it's like I said earlier, it's a multiple system where he likes 3-4s, he likes four
Yeah.
threes. He does a lot of blitzing. He does a lot of checks after the snap. So it's just going to be interesting for I think Florida fans to watch what that looks like. But here's what we know, Greg: the Gators defensively have not been very good. Whatever they've done in the last 3 seasons, they've ranked near the bottom of the NCAA, really, and that's very unlike Florida. I mean, they've
Yep.
always produced good defenses, but I think that speaks to some coaching transitions, some turmoil just in that area with their planning and their scheme, and also I think just the lack of you know talent that we're
Yep.
used to. But I do think I've seen it myself. I like some of the players they brought in. I can see the upgrade in talent. So it's just going to take a time
Yep.
again. I know that's kind of a broken record, but that's just the theme of where the Gators are this year.
As long as you see it, that's the thing. As long as you can see, look,
Yeah.
statistically speaking, on the services, it looks like the recruiting is doing better, and that's what you
Yes.
need. So,
I can say that without question. I'm seeing an upgrade in talent this camp.
and then finally, the special teams. Everybody's back, right? Should be another.
Yeah, pretty good. You got the punter Jeremy Crawshaw, one of the veterans, an Australian kid who,
Aren't
he
they all
came over.
Australian
I know. I
nowadays?
think that's a rule now. You have to be Australian to be a punter, and he fits the rules. So they like him. He's a veteran. Uh, they had a guy last year who came out of nowhere, kind of the Adam Mahalik to be the kicker, because Trey Smack, who is also still here, he was this freshman that most people thought might take that position, but Adam Mahalik was more consistent and got the job, and now he's back. So you look at there, you do have some veterans uh, at the specialist positions in the kicking game, and then in the return game, I think Ricky Pearsall, the receiver, probably the number one guy at punt return. Kickoff return, you're going to see a mixture there. Guys like Montreal Johnson has worked some at kickoff return.
Hmm.
Uh, Trey, oh man, my name's like Trey Wilson, the freshman from Tampa. He's a guy that I think they could work there at kickoff return. So
Okay.
it's just kind of guys still working at that position. I don't think they're set on any group right now.
So losing last 3 and 4 to 7, you always want to get off to a good start, but the schedule for Florida: tough early, tough late, middle is okay, but that's going to be a really tough ask. Those first two serious FBS opponents. Having to go to Utah, quarterback returns for Utah. It's a very tough place to play. And then getting Tennessee, we know the trajectory that program's been going.
Yeah.
So, boy, if they could figure out a way to go 3-1 or something like that, that would almost be classified a tremendous success. But that's really going to be tough. And then you just wonder, it's all about keeping those kids positive if they do
Yeah.
go 1-2.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be a huge challenge early in the season, Greg. I mean, anytime it's such an unusual start for Florida going to play Utah in the
Yeah.
season. Last year they came here as the number seventh ranked team, and Florida pulled off the upset in
Yep.
Billy Napier's first game as Florida coach. It was one of those magical moments that,
Yeah.
where's this going? And then, of course, reality kind of came back. Now this year they're having to go out there again. Utah, I think, is going to open the season 14th in the national
Sure.
polls. Gators are unranked. It's a team that, as we've talked about here, we don't know a lot about what they're going to be. If they were to go out there and pull off that win, I mean, that'd be a monumental win, I think, for the program, especially in terms of just confidence and stuff. Because last year's win was at home. You had a special quarterback in Richardson. You had some veterans on defense like Ventrell Miller, Mari Burney. Those guys are all gone now. So it's a younger team. I think it's going to be a bigger challenge to go out there and win. But
Huge. Yeah.
if you do, it could be a huge boost. But if you lose, like you said, how do you kind of maintain some momentum or positive vibes around the locker room and stuff? And I think these guys are young enough to look. When you're young and you're just trying to find
Yeah.
your identity. I think young teams can bounce back a little quicker from that stuff than maybe
I
veteran
agree.
teams. So I wouldn't. I don't think anything that happens in the first two or three
Yeah.
games is going to determine the season, but it certainly could if things goes bad. It could get worse, but at the same time, I think we're just going to go on a roller coaster ride, Greg.
Yep.
I really think that's what this year's going to be.
And I agree. When you're rebuilding, it's yeah. I don't those especially you're recruiting these kids and you're all in it together almost, and you understand it's not. You all understand it's not a quick fix. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
the
not, and
fans may think of it differently, but
yeah,
inside that room, in that locker room, they have a different process.
yeah, and that's a big message from the coaching staff. I mean, they're trying to keep them level, and here's where we are, and don't get the old don't get too high or too
Yeah.
low because you can't really with the young team. And young teams, what I like about them is sometimes they surprise you, and I would say they're going to win a game or two that I don't see right now them winning. And they'll probably lose a game during the course of the season that I
Probably.
thought they'll win. That's
Yeah.
just where it is. But at the end of it, you just hope that some guys really have shown a great improvement to build for the future. And I think that's what Billy Napier's probably hoping
Yeah, and
for.
if you can get to a bowl and get some extra
Yeah,
practices, that always is helpful.
always is big. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, once again, Scott, I really appreciate the time. And your first big game at home against Tennessee should be a good one for the fans. So I'm sure they're all looking forward because Gators have dominated that series for as of course for a very long time. Last year is different, so we'll see what happens. So yes, hopefully we'll get if something does happen and this team actually makes a little bit of noise this season, maybe we'll get the opportunity to talk again before we do this again next season.
All right, it's a big. I'm sure that would be good for all Gators fans, Greg. And thanks
Yes,
for having me as always. And we're at that part of the season where I'm glad talking season's about over. We finally get to see some football soon, right?
can't wait. Thanks, Scott.
All right. Thank you, Greg.